Every year, I do a massive video about all the apps, shortcuts, widgets, everything that's on my iPad. And it's normally this 30-minute monstrosity of just a ton of stuff to go over. And I don't really get to go into a ton of detail about how I use certain apps or shortcuts or whatever. This year, I'm going to take that video and break it up into different categories. First up, I want to focus on all of the productivity apps that I use on my iPad. I'm a big productivity person and I've got a lot of stuff to talk about in this category. This video is sponsored by UGREEN. Let's get into it. Things is a staple in my setup. This is the task manager I have been using for years, but it's not just a task manager, it's also a project manager for me. In Things, I use areas to break up different parts of my life. The main areas are personal and work. I also have some other areas for video projects, shorts, sponsors, and ideas. Areas and Things are top-level categories. Unlike projects, you never complete these. You can create an area by hitting the New List button. Projects are for tasks that have multiple steps, but will usually get completed with a couple of exceptions. I have some projects for shopping list, housework, sponsorships, and paying bills, unfortunately. In Things, projects show a progress of how many tasks are left versus how many you have completed. Another thing that sets projects apart from areas in Things is you can create headings in projects. Drag the new task button inside a project to the side and it'll allow you to create a heading in here. I use headings to break up bigger projects. But then there's projects like sponsorships. I use a heading as a sort of a Kanban board. A Kanban board allows you to break up a task into the different states that they are in. In the case of sponsorships, I have 3 states of being. Potential is the first. This is where we're working out the details. Then it moves to active. This means the contract is signed, we have all the materials, and a due date. Then there is completed. This means I have made the video and it's published, but I am waiting to be paid from the brand. Things has a few built-in areas at the top. The first is the inbox. This is where I dump tasks when things just pop into my head and I don't want to forget about them. This could be video ideas, things I want to do around the house, whatever. I also use the share sheet integration with Things and it will save links and other stuff into Things. Usually I just drop them in the inbox and deal with them later. If you use the share sheet, URLs will be added automatically to the notes field. The inbox is a temporary home for tasks, not a place to work out of. Tasks that go here should be moved again when you have time to fill out all of the metadata. Today is the view I work out of the most. This is simple. It shows everything that is due today. In Things, there are 2 different ways to set things as a due date. I love this. The first and most common is setting the when. For me, if a task or a project is going to take multiple days, I use this as the start date, especially for video projects. The other kind of due date is the deadline feature. This is for tasks that have to be done by a certain date. For those tasks and projects that take multiple days, this is my end date. If you use a deadline, Things will tell you how many days left you have to complete something. No other task manager seems to work like this when you have the ability to set 2 different dates for something. If something's a simple one-off task like do laundry or go grocery shopping, I use the when option for this. This way it doesn't get flagged as red and it's all dramatic or anything like that. It's just there. The when due option is the only one that lets you set a timed reminder. You absolutely don't need to use both when you're setting up a task or a project, but it's great that the flexibility is there if you do want to use both, or if you want something super serious like a deadline, or if you just want like, hey, I need a timed reminder about taking out the trash or something later on. The other view I use a lot is the upcoming view. This lays out all of your upcoming tasks you have scheduled. I do wish, though, you could change how it's laid out. The more you scroll through the upcoming view, the more compressed it gets. I wish everything could be laid out as each individual day. It wouldn't compress the timeline. Or if you had the option of setting up a traditional calendar view, so you could see the month of December or January, and you can see when all of your tasks are due in that month, and then you could just drag things around and make it more balanced. That would be really nice. Now every week I sit down and do a review of my tasks and projects. I go through what I have scheduled. I also go through the anytime and someday view. Anytime is where tasks live that don't have a due date at all. Someday is a special option when you're assigning a date to a task. You can put them in the someday view. This is stuff that's low priority of tasks that you could just do at any time. There's no real rush. Just when you have time to get to them, you can do them there. Now, I try and make sure I'm taking care of this view because what I don't want to happen is this to explode with, oh my gosh, I could do this anytime, no big deal, whatever. So I try and at least get one of these tasks done a week. I'm going to talk about how I add tasks to things in my upcoming shortcuts video that's a part of this series. I usually don't open the app and manually enter a task. I go through a shortcut. So I'm going to save that for that video. So be sure to subscribe if you aren't already. This video is sponsored by UGREEN. UGREEN makes some of the most interesting accessories for your iPad. The first one I want to talk about is the UGREEN Nexode Pro 100 watt charger. This is a 100 watt fast charger, way more than enough to fast charge even the biggest iPad Pro. It will even charge a 14-inch MacBook Pro from 0 to 86% in 60 minutes. Nexode uses AirPry tech combined with GaN Infinity chips to give you that 100 watt charger in the size of a typical 65 watt charger. This thing is small while still packing a punch, which makes it the perfect travel charger. It supports various fast charging protocols including PD, QC, SCP, AFC, and the 45 watt Samsung Super Fast Charging 2.0. It also has a built-in thermal guard to protect your devices from overheating and overcharging. There are 2 USB-C ports and a USB-A port. This means you can charge a laptop and 2 other devices at the same time. If you need something with even more power output, UGREEN has a 160 watt charger. This is great for 16-inch MacBook Pros. It has 3 USB-C ports and a USB-A port. In fact, this works with all of my gear I take with me when I travel, and this has become the one charging brick to live in my backpack now. UGREEN makes some really interesting tech accessories along with a few other Nexode chargers. I'm going to put links to the chargers that I mentioned in the description below. Be sure to go check them out. My thanks to UGREEN for sponsoring this video. This year I decided not to renew my Fantastical subscription. While I think it is a great app, it's probably the best calendar app out on the market, it's just not something I need. I don't use a calendar a lot. I don't live out of a calendar. If you do, just absolutely live out of your calendar, Fantastical is the app to go look at. But for me, I have a couple of events a week, nothing that exciting. So I've been trying this app called Minial lately. It's beautifully designed and it hooks right into the calendars you have set up in iOS or iPadOS, so you don't have to worry about it syncing with any third-party servers. You can also sign in to your Google account and use your Google Calendar as well. Now, it definitely isn't as full-featured as Fantastical. In fact, it's missing some really key features that are in Fantastical that I thought I couldn't live without. The main one being calendar sets. And this is a bummer because even the default calendar app now has calendar set options. But I love the way this app is laid out. It's very similar to the narrow view of Fantastical, where you have the calendar month up top and you can select a specific day and it'll show you what events are going on that day below. There's also built-in search, so you don't have to manually flip through your calendar to find that specific event. Another thing I really miss from Fantastical is natural language input for creating calendar events. Natural language input just speeds up the whole process of creating a calendar event. You're not having to go through, flip a bunch of, toggles and switches and, find a specific date and stuff like that. You could just type it all out. I really miss that. With Minial, you can create event templates. So if you're somebody that has the same kind of event happening over and over and over again, whether it's a meeting or like a kids thing or whatever, you can create a template and you can just quickly add it to your calendar whenever you need it. If you right click or long press on an event, you can also quickly change the date of that event. You can also copy that event to multiple other dates, which is a really cool feature. Minial is a great basic calendar app if you don't need a lot from your calendar. It's designed really well, and if you want the pro features, it's just a one-time payment. but I would love to see it get support for natural language input and calendar sets. Those are the two big things I miss from Fantastical. Since iPadOS 17 was released and it fixed all the big Stage Manager issues that I had, I have been working strictly from the iPad with Stage Manager on the whole time. Now, I have a specific stage set up just for task management and calendar. Here I have two things windows and a mini-cal window. The main things window takes up about 2/3 of the screen. This is what I primarily work out of. The second things window is skinny, showing off a specific project or view. I use this as a reference window a lot, so when I'm deciding what sponsorships are going to go with what videos, or kind of working through my week, doing my weekly review, that's kind of how I use this. Minical is another skinny window here, and I just, again, want this as a reference window when I'm kind of doing these reviews, making sure I'm not missing any calendar events, stuff like that. This year, I wanted to get all of my writing, long form, note-taking, all of that stuff into just one app. But there doesn't seem to be just one app to rule them all, to bring them together and in the darkness bind them. So instead, I've just been leaning into a few different apps' strengths. Throughout most of this year, my go-to note-taking and writing app has been Obsidian. There was a few weeks where it got really buggy and I had to step away from it, but it seems to be a lot better now. This is where I write all of my research and scripts for videos, write down notes about personal projects, or even just jot something down quickly. I see note-taking as my personal superpower. It's how I stay organized and it's how I'm able to add so much detail to my videos. Obsidian is probably the most powerful text editor in the App Store right now. You can customize the theme, build or install third-party plugins, change keyboard shortcuts, and a lot more. Now, once you have the vault for Obsidian set up, you can start building out your folders in the app. Now, the folder structure is very basic. It's just like any other folder structure. You have the root, and you can do subfolders as well. Here I have all the different areas of my life. One nice feature is you can long press or right click on a folder to create a new note directly in that. I have a plugin installed called Recent Files. This just gives me a list of all the recent files I've worked on. Really nice for quickly jumping between documents. Most of the time though, I will use the built-in quick switcher. The keyboard shortcut to bring this up is Command O. This is kind of like Spotlight built into Obsidian. You can just type the name of the note right here and open it. What's nice is Obsidian has support for tabs, so you can hit Shift-Enter when a note is selected and it'll open it up in a new tab. In Obsidian, if you hit Command-P, you will get the command palette. This is a list of all the commands, both built-in and third-party plugins you have installed. This is great if you can't remember a keyboard shortcut for something. I added both the quick switcher and command palette to the keyboard bar at the bottom, so when I'm in tablet mode, I can just tap on those. When I don't have a physical keyboard attached, this is when I'm using these features the most. With Obsidian, I set up my normal Launchpad note-taking document that I've done in a bunch of different other note-taking apps. But this time, it's smart. My Launchpad document takes advantage of the internal note linking in an app. In Obsidian, you can type 2 open brackets and then the note name. But where it gets interesting is I use a plugin called Data View to pull notes from a specific folder and organize the Launchpad document. This way it updates for me automatically based on what I am currently working on and what is living in those folders. There is no need for me to manually add documents to my Launchpad document. This way this document stays up to date. Now this is the document I start my day from. I can tap on any one of these items in here and it launches that note right into a new tab. I keep my Launchpad note in a pen tab so I can always get to it quickly. The theme I'm using for Obsidian is the Minimal theme, but I tweaked it. I built it to match my Dark Knight theme that I made for drafts. I really like how this turns out. The font I'm using is JetBrains Mono. For all the settings that I changed for Minimal, I'll try and export them and put a little link to a document in the description of this video so you can just go and download that document and import them. I'm going to try. I'm not entirely sure how well that's going to work though. Now, I'm still working on a much bigger Obsidian video. I kind of scrapped it for a little while because Obsidian got really buggy, but it seems to be doing a lot better now. I'm going to go into a lot more details about how I use Obsidian and organize things in that video, so subscribe if you want to see that. Drafts is another text editor I use on my iPad, but I don't use it for long form or note taking. I use Drafts for text snippets. This can be stuff like messages, video descriptions, posts, text templates, lists, anything along those lines. Typically, this is really temporary text that's going to be sent a couple places, maybe used once or twice, and then I'm done with it. Nothing that I'm going to keep long-term goes here. Now, Drafts, like Obsidian, is very customizable. There's action extensions you can set up, theming, keyboard shortcuts, and more. In fact, there is a site the developer set up and put together so that you can go and search for whatever you want. This includes themes, actions, whatever. The theme I made is called Dark Knight, and it's in the Drafts action directory. What makes it different from Obsidian is Drafts is built around the idea of writing text and then sending it someplace else. I have used Drafts as my long form and note-taking app in the past, but now I'm just kind of embracing what it's for, where it's for temporary text, and I'm splitting these two things up because what I was noticing is my note-taking app was getting overrun with hundreds of little text snippets that I would write and then wouldn't delete or anything with, and it just made search difficult. It just wasn't good, so I'm splitting these two things up now. Now, one thing that these two note-taking apps aren't great at is collaboration. Both of these apps don't have any collaboration whatsoever. I've been using Apple Notes with my girlfriend for shared notes. Apple Notes is great, especially for collaboration. The biggest thing holding me back from going all in on Apple Notes is the lack of Markdown support though. Markdown is really helpful when it comes to like speed writing for me. I can, write a lot faster in Markdown than having to remember keyboard shortcuts or go through specific menus to get things. 3 note-taking apps may sound like a lot, especially when I said at the beginning of this section I was trying to pare down to just one. Obsidian is for note-taking, long-form writing, and anything I'm going to keep for a long term. Drafts is for short text snippets and stuff I'm just going to use quickly and then can get rid of. And Notes is for stuff I just share with my girlfriend, like movies and shows we want to watch, places we want to go, and things I need to do at her house. I do use one more app that would be considered a note-taking app, but I have 2 specific use cases for it, and neither of those are note-taking. That app is GoodNotes. A long few years ago, I made a journaling template with my, at the time, podcasting partner. The podcast has since ended, but we made a journaling template that was built into a shortcut and it was a whole thing. I've since stopped using the shortcut because every time iOS was updated, it would break and it just got frustrating. But I've taken that template and I've put it in GoodNotes. And this is my journaling template. This is what I use every single morning when I come into my office. I found that taking 10 to 15 minutes, sitting down, reflecting on what happened yesterday, and kind of coming up with a plan on how to tackle all the tasks I have due today really helps me quite a bit. The other thing I use GoodNotes for is marking up scripts. Now, when I finish a video script, I take it and move it into GoodNotes and I kind of sit in my chair over here in the office and I just mark it up. I figure out what's working, what doesn't work, make edits, and then I'll go back into Obsidian and make those changes. It's just really nice to sit down with the Apple Pencil and make those edits. I also will export the final version of the script into GoodNotes, and I use that as a shot list for when I'm filming B-roll in here. It's just kind of nice, so I don't have to go back and hand write out a shot list for every video. I can look at a script and know what's going to need B-roll for it, so I can just film it, mark it off, and be done. Now, one thing I don't want to overlook, and it's not really an app, but it's the built-in PDF viewer in iPadOS. iPadOS 17 got some really handy changes to that PDF viewer. When opening a PDF in apps like Files or Mail, you'll get a new markup option. I use this all the time for filling out forms and contracts. You can even add signatures to stuff. Now, if I do need to go a bit further than what the basic PDF markup tools are, I will use an app called PDF Expert. There's a ton of stuff you can do in here, like annotations, add images and links, and redact things. There's a bunch of stuff you can do here. Every once in a while, I just need something a bit more, and PDF Expert always seems to be the app that has the tool I need when it comes to that. Now, one thing I love about PDF Expert is the fact that you can go in and highlight text in it, and it'll pull whatever you highlighted out into an annotations column. Now, I get a lot of reviewer guides for new and embargoed tech. Usually this is like spec sheets so people like me can have all the information we need in one place. But companies love to fill this with extra fluff. So what I'll do is I'll take these, I'll throw them in PDF Expert, and I'll go in and highlight the stuff that I need for my videos. You know, specific spec stuff like CPU clock speeds or battery life or, you know, screen brightness, things like that. I'll highlight those, pull those bits out into the annotation column, so that way I'm not having to search through a big old long PDF full of a bunch of extra fluff. My only complaint about this is I wish I could make the annotations column wider. There's an app called Highlights that does this same thing, but it doesn't have all the extra PDF stuff. And that annotations column is super wide, and I kind of miss that. The next app up is technically a utility, but I use it in a productivity sense, and this is my video and I can do whatever I want. So I'm putting it in the productivity category. That app is Dark Noise. There are just an absolute ton of background and white noise apps on the App Store, but Dark Noise is the best. It not only has sounds that sound good, but it's beautiful looking. Now, with Dark Noise, you aren't just playing the same generic background sounds. You can build scenes and incorporate the different sounds that are in the app in these scenes. You can then use sliders to determine the volume of each sound, so you're really building a whole different soundscape. I use Dark Noise whenever I am writing. I found music that has lyrics to be really distracting with my ADHD. Pair Dark Noise with noise-canceling headphones and the rest of the world just kind of fades away for me. I used to use a lot of lo-fi beat music when I was writing, but it actually started throwing off my Apple Music algorithm, so I just stopped. But in iOS and iPadOS 17.2, there is a new focus filter that lets you turn off Use Listen History. This way, whenever you turn this listen history off, it's not using the music that you're listening to go into the algorithm and recommend you more stuff based on this. This is especially great if you have kids. So what I did was create a writing focus. So when I turn this writing focus on, it turns off the Use Listen History. Then I can switch between dark noise and lo-fi music whenever I want. My personal favorite is from my friend Tom over on the Byte Review channel. He put together Kirikou Radio, and it's just like this kind of like lo-fi beat music that's almost Zelda-ish that I just absolutely love. I can really focus when listening on this. So what I did is I took the different volumes that he's made and just put it into one playlist. Now we can't talk about productivity without talking about email. Unfortunately, I'm pretty basic when it comes to this. I just use the Apple Mail app. I haven't found a third-party email client that clicks for me, something that I like. A lot of them really just want you to use Gmail, and that's not what my email host is. So, yeah. But what I do use is a service called SaneBox, and I've talked about it a bunch before. It's a service that sits in between your email server and your inbox, and what it does is it filters your mail as it comes in. So it has a newsletter folder, so if you get a bunch of newsletters, all those newsletters go into a newsletter folder. If stuff isn't important or from a sender that you don't talk to, it could go into a later folder, which is kind of like low priority stuff. And then there's a folder called Sane Black Hole, and this one is my personal favorite. Because I have a public email address, some people like to sign me up for things that I don't want. So what I do is when that stuff comes in, it gets put into the same black hole because as we all know, the unsubscribe button is hooked up to nothing. So when new email comes in from that sender, it goes into the black hole, gets marked as read. I never ever see it. It's perfect. I get an absolute ton of email every single day, and the only reason why I'm like sort of able to stay on top of it is because of SaneBox and the filtering that it does. One of my favorite settings about SaneBox is I have it set up that only people I have responded to and have had conversations with get added to the inbox. Everything else that if I've never talked to you, even if SaneBox thinks, hey, maybe this might be important, could be the President of the United States, Tim Cook, whatever. If they email me and I haven't talked to them before, it gets put into that Sane Later folder. Because if I haven't talked to you, you're not as big a priority as people that I am currently working with. This way, I know if something shows up in the inbox, it's important. It's something I need to deal with probably that day. So that's it. Those are my productivity apps. I'm going to be back with more videos in this series about utilities, entertainment apps, shortcuts, widgets, games, and more. So be sure to subscribe. I do want to hear from you all. What are your go-to productivity apps on the iPad? Let me know in the comments below. My thanks to UGREEN for sponsoring this video. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great day.